I'm just stuck on the ironic part of the fact that Matt turned off Birds of Prey to watch a documentary about a deranged, annoying clown with daddy issues. That was Kurt.
Who's the deranged, annoying clown with daddy issues?
Trump.
Oh, it wasn't about him. It was about the National Enquirer.
Oh, well, same thing.
If only.
It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Only got.
I liked Birds of Prey, and I'll stick to that.
No, I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yep.
Well, maybe it gets better, but I kept thinking it's going to get better, and I kept getting more and more annoyed. I'm like, that's it. No,
well, no, but you don't like Harley anyway, so you already go like even when you talk about things that are Harley or in the pro to that is, oh, she shut the fuck up and she wasn't in much of it. like that character puts you on tilt, so I don't think you're naturally inclined to like her.
I like her. I like her in a lot of the animated stuff that she's in.
Yeah.
I just don't like Margot Robbie. I think the problem's Margot Robbie. I don't like her the way she portrays Harley Quinn. Her accent's completely phony sounding to me. I mean, it sounds way overdone.
Oh yeah, it's cheesed up.
I don't know. She's just really off-putting to me as as Harley Quinn.
It's kind of like when Anna Paquin plays anybody from the South.
I don't know who that is.
That's the chick that played Rogue.
Oh God.
And in True Blood.
Yeah. Her two most famous roles are Southern roles. And she wasn't good as either of them.
And has a terrible, terrible Southern accent. But that's also what other people think Southern accents sound like.
You want to hear an amazing Southern accent that will... So in No Country for Old Men, the woman that plays Llewellyn's wife, plays Josh Brolin's wife, she is Irish.
Huh.
She's Irish, and she has a thick Irish brogue. It'll blow your mind. And she pulls off that Southern accent it's amazing.
Australians can do Southern accents fairly well for some reason.
Speaking of Australians, something else I watched yesterday. I found Pride of the X-Men on YouTube. Finally watched Pride of the X-Men. Wolverine with an Australian accent was a complete... your mind can't wrap that around. Oi, she's too young to join the team. I was like, what the fuck is this? I mean, dude, it was I'm like, who made this call? It's just amazing. Of course, then I thought about the time when that came out, and that was right at the peak when Australian fever was gripping America, and people loved Australia for some reason.
Yeah.
Must have been about the time that Crocodile Dundee came out.
Yeah, it was exactly what it was. And I'm like, okay, I guess they decided to ride that, but still, that's not an excuse. Reason or not, it's not an excuse.
It's an excuse. It's not a justification. It's just like, no, like this might be why you say you're doing this. It doesn't change the fact that it was a terrible idea and someone punished.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm like, Stan Lee does the voiceover at the beginning and end. I'm like, Stan, how did you let this happen?
Oh, come on. We all know Stan. There was money involved. He did it.
No, if it was, so this was assumably in the late 80s, early 90s. That was when they needed money more than anything. So
it was the animation was really good on it. Really good. Damn sight better than, what we ended up getting with the series that hit Fox.
Yeah.
The rest of the voices were pretty dang good. Magneto was really, all the voices felt pretty spot on. But damn, man, Wolverine.
I would like to have a cartoon based off original X-Men and the way they talked back then. Where Magneto just told everybody, silence, I'm talking. Don't you dare interrupt me.
I think you're going to have to finance that if you get it, Craig, because you're the only one that wants that.
Channeling Stan Lee's 1960s pseudo hippie speak.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Speaking of 1960s pseudo hippie speak, you know what today is?
No.
It's the day that we record episode 138 of the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. and happily so. And you know,
that may be the worst segue ever.
I don't need your judgment right now, Craig. I don't appreciate it. It's unnecessary. I found a way in. I took it. It might have been the wrong exit, but it's the one I got off on. So, welcome back to everybody who joins us on a regular basis. And if you're new, hey, welcome for the first time. We appreciate you being here, and we hope you enjoyed this show. As usual, I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
Matt Trogdon.
And I'm Craig Lance.
And we are Southern Fried Geekery. We are, if you don't know, we're a couple of guys. We sit around, we chit-chat about comics every week.
A couple
Sunday.
is two.
Wait, say that again?
A couple is two.
Yeah, we're three guys.
We're a few fellows who sit around. God, you semantical asshole.
I'm sorry.
Just here to shit.
Words shouldn't mean the things you want to say, Craig.
Right.
That's what Caleb's trying to tell you.
We are a trio of individuals who gather to pontificate the wonders of the sequential form that is comics each week. Are you happy now?
Continue.
Sure. Continue. We'll let you know.
If you like our show, if you listen to this and you enjoy what you hear and you want more of it, you want to connect with us in some way, you should head over to our Facebook group. We're Southern Fried Geekery. If you get in the search bar of the Facebooks, you can find us there. We also have Twitter and Instagram pages. We're at SFG Podcast on both of those. And if you have any queries, conundrums, things that you want to discuss in depth and detail, maybe you're making a comic and you're like, hey, if you guys could talk about that, that'd be great. You can shoot us an email, southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com. And that's really all the promotion that we're gonna do. We don't have any other stuff to promote, so that's just it.
I mean, this whole show is about self-promotion to begin with. So.
I thought that was the point.
Right. I keep waiting on Matt to hook us up with a TikTok. I think Matt should, I nominate him to be our
Matt
TikTok,
should be our TikTok
on our
manager.
TikTok account.
I don't have that kind of clock.
Yours is digital. Just there's no clicking involved. No, so I am excited about this today because it's been a little bit of a week, long one, and I don't know about you guys or for the folks listening at home, but this is one of the more enjoyable parts of my week where I get to sit down and talk to my buddies about the books that we read, the fun stuff. So before we get going on all that, though, is everybody doing okay this week? How's everybody else but me hanging in there?
Hanging in there.
Yeah, hanging in there, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, it's weird times.
Weird
It is.
times.
Get through August and hopefully it'll all be better.
I start law school again in a week. I'm not excited about it.
Good times.
So I guess that's from home.
Yeah, ours will be from home. The first years get to go to school. I'm a second year law student, so we get to do everything online, and some of the third years are split. So, which I'm not upset about. I'm not upset about that.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
I've got a home office, so I can kind of do everything I need to do from here. I can understand.
So are you able to still work some when you go back, or is that been now until next summer?
No, I'm keeping my clerkship. I'm staying on for the rest of the year, the rest of the school year actually, and so I'll stick around there. Because it's through the school, my hours get cut, so I can only work 20 hours a week while school's going on.
Oh, okay.
Which isn't bad. Still bringing.
It's still better than what it was in the first 2 years of law school.
Oh yeah, it's still a major increase in the $0 I was getting. So
whatever it is 1,000% increase.
But nobody but us cares about me becoming a lawyer. Well, I mean, maybe the people who are going to hire me one day, but we'll see about that.
Those of us that may actually need you as a lawyer at some point in the future.
Craig has a vested interest in me becoming a lawyer. Well, how was your comics reading this week?
Good. Seemed like I only had a handful of books to read, but every book I read was really good.
That's always fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a lot. I read a lot this week.
Did you pour through?
Yeah, I had a lot to go through this week.
Did you?
Picked up, and I started an OG in yesterday, the comic book history of professional wrestling. Got that baby off of eBay at a really good price.
Nice.
Tearing through that.
That is, what's his name? Oh, I can picture him in my head. He wrote G.I. Joe for a while. He's got long hair. Sitterson, Aubrey Sitterson's book, right?
Don't have it in front of me. I'd have to look. I was going to talk about it once I finished it, as far as going through the credits and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear about that because, like I said, if it's the Sitterson book, then it's good stuff from what I understand. I haven't read it.
Very well written. It's very well written. It's got a very easy narrative. It's easy to read, definitely, and it's there's a lot to say about that when you're talking about a historical book and you're talking about an historical narrative. Mm-hmm. Those aren't the easiest things to pull off, but it's done really well.
Nice. Well, I read a book. It didn't quite make it to being the book I'm going to talk about on the show, but there is the latest issue of Hawkman came out, written by Robert Venditti. And so it's a bummer because it got announced this week that this is one of the titles that's getting cut. I'm not sure how many issues we have left, but this entire series has been amazing. The artist on it, who's started off with Hitch, but Pasarin is the one who's taken over the art duties now, and he's in the vein of Hitch, so he's a good follow up to that. Like if it's all collected, I think it'll flow neatly. But they've been doing this whole thing where it's not a retcon, but it's a pulling together of where the Hawks who have been reincarnated through time and space, it's pulling all of those continuities into one. And there's essentially like a Hawk deity, or somebody who's trying to take over the Hawk deity. Anyway, they resolve that major issue, and it's neat because they get kicked back into a more golden age setting, which is obviously where Hawkman and Carter Hall originate from. So it's going to be cool to see them saddled up with some. Maybe some Justice Society members, some Golden Age members that we don't see too often. So I'm excited about it.
That's awesome. Probably my favorite book that I read this week. Well, maybe not my favorite, but one of the books is that I read this week that I really liked. Outside of the one I'm going to talk about is Something is Killing Our Children. Mm-hmm. This book continues to be one of my favorite horror books that is happening right now. It's just really good. I recommend that you guys read this at some point, whether through trade or whatever, borrow mine, whatever you need to do. It's good. Should be read.
I don't think I could pick an overall favorite of the week. My big three. I mean, this week was really strong for me. My big three, I guess, would have continued to be my big three: Immortal Hulk, The Batman's Grave, and X-Force. Probably be the top three for me.
So good.
Yeah, I was really glad in X-Force. His number 11 came out this week. That's Benjamin Piercy, and the artist's name is Basil Dua. Basil Dua is his name. And then Guru Effects are on that one. This one, finally, we see Colossus kick into gear. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. When is the new Hickman verse going to use Colossus? And Colossus has new motivations and is jumping into the battle going into the next issue, I can assume. So I'm stoked about that. Marauders. Did y'all read Marauders number 11?
I did not.
I haven't yet. No.
Man, this the storyline to date has been that there's a problem. Kitty Pryde is not, I don't know, Krakoa and the resources associated with Krakoa and mutants somehow have passed Kitty Pryde by. And, of course, spoilers, she was killed earlier in the series, and they're having trouble resurrecting her via the resurrection protocol on Krakoa. Well, that issue is brought to light in this one and done in a pretty damn clever fashion, I have to say. Just another Jerry Dugan is writing that one. Mm-hmm. Stefano Caselli's on the art, and Edgar Delgado is colors. But yeah, this one was clever. I really like this issue for what they did with Kitty Pryde in that one. So I think y'all will be impressed as well. Jerry Dugan he keeps delivering, man. And I also read this is my short stack, obviously, but I want to mention IDW's Judge Dredd False Witness #2 by Brandon Easton, Kezama, and Eva De La Cruz. Man, this is hella topical. In Mega City 1, there is a media company that is spouting hateful messages across the airwaves and inciting the certain segment of the populace to violent action and using the free speech angle to defend what they're doing.
It's almost as if you could have looked at society and determined where we were headed.
I mean, yeah, it's hella topical.
Well, you can see where we're headed because you can see where we came from. Fascism isn't necessarily creative. They use the same small playbook. It's just very effective.
Yeah, it's so. Yeah, I mean, it's so topical it may make some people uncomfortable, frankly. But
fuck them.
Yeah, it's once again a good Judge Dredd story that I appreciate.
Nice.
Very cool. Well, you know what else we read this week?
I hope we all read the same book if we're going to talk about it.
I think we did. If we followed Craig's orders, Craig was very bossy this week. So Craig came out and he said, "No, we're all going to read this book. We're not going to talk about it. There's no discussion to be had. This is the book. You will read it, Caleb. You will talk about it. Do it."
Cable. Yep. And then we did a, order and cease and desist and do it.
to which I replied,
there's no democracy on the battlefield. I think we all know this.
No, yeah. To which my reply was just yes, Daddy. That was all I got out. No, so we are going to roundtable a book that I actually really enjoyed. It's called 7 Secrets. It's written by Tom Taylor, Danielle De Niculo, colors by Walter Biamonte, and letters by Ed Dukeshire. But now, before we start this, though, I do just want to, do our due diligence, extend everyone the favor of saying that we are going to spoil some things about this and other comics as we talk about them this episode, and some of them are relatively new. So, in the spirit of the fact, maybe you want to read this, maybe it's on maybe you've already bought it, you just hadn't got it to it because we're all busy, and that's fine. But check the show notes, see where we're talking about things at. We don't want to spoil anything for you, but we are going to talk about these things in depth because it's our show and we pay the Libsyn account. Or, well, Craig does. So we do what Craig wants to do. So that's your handy dandy spoiler warning. That's straight from us to you. It's a gift. It's what you're getting for Christmas this year. So you can't be mad at it. Now, like I said, this is a new series. It was a ton of fun. It is from Boom Comics, which was interesting to see. They are a publisher who are growing, I think, on us. We talk about them a lot more than I think we did when we originally started chatting about the comics and putting it out on the internet. So it's neat to see. It's really nice to see Boom gain some traction because they are really putting out some high quality stuff. None the least of which is this new series by, speaking of Australians, Tom Taylor, as we were talking about him earlier, who has really stormed, DC especially, but he's become a big name as of late, and rightfully so because the man's good at what he does.
Yeah.
So. In the 7 Secrets, before we talk about the meat and potatoes of it, what did you guys think about this? Did you like it, dislike it? How'd it treat you?
I was lukewarm on this one, actually.
Okay.
I liked it. I liked it a lot. Really enjoyed it.
All right. Well, hold on to the lukewarmness of it all, Matt. And I'm very interested in talking about this later because there were aspects of it that I struggled with. There were aspects of it that I was I think this is cool. It's not necessarily for me, but I overall really enjoyed the story. So what is the story, you might be asking? And I'm glad you're asking that because we've got an answer for you. So 7 Secrets, we don't really know we assumedly it's sometime in either the present that we just don't know about or the future, but there is a call it a clandestine organization, and their entire job, their entire purpose for being, are to protect these, aptly named 7 secrets that are, if they're collected by the wrong folks, they could be used to destroy the world in some measure. We don't really know how. We don't know what those secrets are. We don't know what's entailed in them. I mean, could be where the Holy Grail is hidden. It could be who shot Kennedy. Could be some magic words that would implode the planet. We don't know. But what we do know in this book is that each of these 7 secrets, they are guarded by a team, by 2 figures. And, one of them is the holder of the secret, and the other one is the keeper of the secret. And these teams, these duos, they kind of just exist together always, and they're always kind of constantly on the move. They're well trained. They're very dedicated. They're kind of alkalite type figures, wholly devoted to the cause. And they travel throughout the world. They're always, like I said, always on the move, constantly running to essentially save the world by not letting these secrets fall into the wrong hands. Now, 2 of these figures that play an important role throughout this story. It's a man and a woman, and the woman's name is Eva, and the man's name is Sigurd. Sigurd. Very Norwegian-esque type name, because he's a very Norwegian-esque looking figure, I think. Maybe Irish. Who can say? Likes brass knuckles. It's fun times. Anyway, these 2 individuals have they're a team. They're a partnership, and they guard the 7th secret. So their entire job is to hold on to the 7th secret and ensure that it isn't misused or abused. And again, highly trained. These people are very capable. Sigurd is a giant of a man. He's thick, as you might say. Very, very much a behemoth. Likes to punch things. Eva is smaller in stature. She, appears to be, adept in things like ninjutsu or some type of martial arts. She's wiry. She's the one who does the running when she needs to, if you need to get out quick. Whereas Sigurd is kind of a wall. If he needs to hold people back, he does so. Well, they've kind of come to find themselves in a tight spot in a couple of different ways. They have been cornered by. We don't really know who he is, but we know his name. There is an agent, and his name is Amon, Amon, and he's just a generally a bad dude, right? Like we don't know what's motivating him to get these secrets, but it appears that he is hunting down these secrets one by one. Now that's tight spot number 1 that Eva and Sigurd have found themselves in. Tight spot number 2, we actually got to go back in time a little bit. We got to go back about 15 years. These 2, people are wont to do, they spend a lot of time together. They grow quite fond of each other. And in a moment of, I call it boredom, call it drunkenness, call it just human attraction, they broke the rules. They did the dirty. They got down, and produced from that was a little bitty baby. Just a little bitty teeny tiny bundle of joy. And like I said, this breaks the rules. The organization that keeps the 7 secrets, this is no. Like this is not meant to happen. It's terrible. And the pregnancy is it causes a big problem. They get called to the council, their bosses, so to speak. And the first person they tell is this woman, this older woman named Tahana. And Tahana is she is actually part of a team that keeps the first secret, and I'm assuming like you as you get promoted, you move up in the hierarchy of things, you get elevated to a better secret. I don't know. Anyway, she's been there for a while, obviously, and she's just like, guy, like how could you all let this happen? You know what's going to happen. This like you're getting kicked out of this organization. Obviously, there's got to be a trial. You're going to be literally judged by the people who lead this organization. And she's very disappointed. It's a very matriarchal moment where she just lets these 2 poor fuckers know that they are in some deep shit. and the trial happens. You know, and it's gotten to the point that Eva can no longer hide the pregnancy. I mean, she's very much got a little bitty baby bump. And they get drug in front of the council. And of course, like all councils, there is a very loud, very intimidating man who has a lot of eloquent things to say, and just really to, you know, shore up his importance. He's, you know, boasting and bragging and generally just being present and a figurehead, letting them know that that's what's going to happen. And he's the judge. And you know, he's calling for a vote to kick them out and to take the child. Now, what they're going to do with the child at this point in time, we don't know. But while this is all happening, and he's just really laying down that the law is black and white in this organization, Tahana steps up, and she's not having it a little bit. She's a little bit annoyed, and she's just like, "Dude, shut up for 5 minutes. Like let's quit pretending like this hasn't happened before. We've been like." There's been a long history in this organization. We stick people together. Sex happens. It's natural. I think what we need to do is give them the opportunity to go and actually have a happy life, to bow out, to take their child, go be a family. Obviously, they'll have to stay here. They can't just go live like next to a Kmart somewhere, but they can just exist in the here and now, but they won't be agents anymore. And you know, he's just like, you can't just do that. And she's like, I can do what the fuck I want to do. You can't stop me with your weird mustache. And she gives the option to Eva and Sigurd, but and Eva is actually very much contemplating this, right? Like this is she's torn, which is kind of surprising because the way that the book lays it out up until this point, you would have thought she was the more staunch one. She was the one who was more dedicated, more rigid in her existence within this organization. But it's actually Sigurd who says no. Like, we made a promise, we took an oath. We're gonna uphold ours. Should, you know, we'll obviously, should the council decide that something needs to happen to us, it'll happen. But, you know, at the very least, like, take this child, raise it to serve this group, to serve the 7 secrets. And, you know, if we need to be punished, punish us. But, you know, this is our calling. This is what we were meant to do. And once he says that, Eva's like, you know what? Yeah, he's right. Like that's what we'll do. And so, you know, the council convenes, they meet, and judgment is rendered. And, you know, they're allowed to keep their jobs. They're allowed to keep being the secret keepers and to holding on to number 7. But the child is taken from them. The child is sent to be raised by this council. And like I said, this was 15 years prior to where the story opens in the present time, as far as the narrative goes. And they are not necessarily a couple. They're still a partnership, but you don't get the feeling that these two they're walking around existing like husband and wife, but it's very obvious they care for one another. And as like the system, Sigurd has positioned himself between the enemy, between Amon and his forces, and Eva, who is making an escape. And the whole plan is to allow her to get far enough away with the secret, which is kept in a briefcase, a high-tech briefcase. It's got a button. You know how briefcases have buttons that makes them fancy? And you push this button, and apparently like shoulder straps pop out, because that's the extent of the technology they've put into keeping this world-ending secret. But she does get away, and she's like, okay, I'm in a safe spot. You need to come on now. We've got a rendezvous, and the helicopter's picking us up, and we're getting the fuck out of Dodge. And he's like, yeah, that's not going to happen, Eva. I'm sorry. These individuals have blown several significant holes through me, and I'm going to be unable to meet with you. Like, he's accepting the fact that this is his end. He is sacrificing himself for her to get away, for the secret to get away. And she's not happy about this. You know, she's like, no, I'm coming back to get you. We've been in tighter spots. And he's like, no, Amon is here. And she pauses. And this is where you start to understand that Amon being out in the open is not normal. Like, this is something has changed in his, in the way that he goes about trying to get these secrets. And Amon is presented as very much a mustache twirler. Like, he's a puppet master of sorts. And so him being in the field, so to speak, is not normal. It's not what you would expect at all. But, you know, Sigurd has resigned himself to the idea that this is kind of game over for him. and that's fine. But what he's going to do, or what he's going to attempt to do, is go ahead and just take Amon out. Like if he's going to die, he might as well die taking this this piece off the board. And so he does that a little bit, or at least, like I said, he tries to. He positions himself. He jumps down. He's got a couple of knives, and he sinks a blade right into Amon's shoulder blade, like right behind the clavicle, which has gotta fucking suck for anybody. But it's not enough. It does wound Amon. It hurts him, not to the point that it's going to be a mortal wound by any sense. And Amon does the villain thing where he waxes poetic for a second because he knows that other people are listening. So he sends a message, and then he takes a scythe, like an old school scythe, something that you would see with a Grim Reaper, or that crops would be taken down with if you needed to separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. And he takes our boy Sigurd's head clean off. Sad times, just sad day, because I'd started to like this fellow. And while all this is happening, what you start to realize in the story is that the narration, who at this point I had thought to be Eva, is not actually Eva. It's the child, who, by the way, is named Caspar. It's Caspar. I'm not really sure how you pronounce. I say Casper, and you're going to think about a friendly ghost, and this person is not a friendly ghost.
It's Casper.
Okay, but it's spelled with an A, and that roughly translates to the great hidden secret, or something along those lines. It says it in the story, which is, there's some, I don't know if you want to call it irony in there, but it's just letting him know that it was his gift to his son. He was the beloved secret. And it's that son who is 15 now, who is narrating this entire story, and just letting him know that, like through the narration, letting you know, like, this is now what I see my dad as making the ultimate sacrifice. But it wasn't always this. So I'd always thought him to be heartless and cold, but it turns out that he had always done this to really protect me. Eva gets away. She jumps in the helicopter. She's keeping the secret safe. And that's really where the story in this first issue kind of ends. Fun times. I think the art does a very good job of letting you know what kind of story this is going to be, because the art is very much done in a manga style. As I was reading this, I'm like, hey, you can see the Japanese influence to this art. You can see where it's pulling from, and it is supposed to be a very, I'm going to use the word juvenile, but I don't mean that in any type of diminutive sense. There's nothing wrong with juvenile stories, but it's meant for a younger audience. It's meant to be a very young, very fast-paced, very manga-esque action adventure with lots of layers. There's a little bit of motion, but it's very much action-oriented to me. And once I saw the art, I was like, that kind of saddled me into what the story became, and so I had less of a problem with it. If the art hadn't have been that manga style, and I hadn't have kind of forecasted what I thought the story was going to entail, I might have had a different feeling about it. But because it, to use a quote, it is what it is, I enjoyed it. I had fun with it. I'm kind of curious to see where it goes, because it ends in a place to where, now that we know who the narrator is, I kind of would have liked them to introduce him in this first arc, but I wonder if he's going to be kind of a faceless narrator who is just telling the story of his parents. And I wonder if we're actually going to see them at all. And who knows? We'll find out in the second issue. But I'm going to hand it over to you guys to wax poetic about it for a minute and let us know what you think about it.
I'm interested in Matt's thoughts on it, since he was lukewarm on it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any specific criticisms about the book. It just felt very vanilla to me. Nothing about it felt compelling. I got done with the story, and I found myself not caring what happens in the next issue. Is, I guess, the best way to say it.
Okay, I mean, I think that's fair.
Just felt very vanilla.
I mean, I guess that's fair. I enjoyed it. I thought that it had some layers to it. I thought there was some interesting things being set for the future. I don't think it's going to be a story about the parents saying how the father died at the end of this one. I think it's leading to a story about the child. But I don't know. I thought the art was good. I thought the story was entertaining for a first issue. And I'm looking forward to see where it goes. I didn't catch the manga style that Caleb talked about. I'm looking back at it now, and I can see how you got that. But interesting take for sure.
Yeah, and I went and looked up some more of the artist work, some more stuff that Danielle Dinaculo has done, and like even in the stuff you find on the internet, he plays up the manga a lot in those things. He's got a not quite, like maybe an early Tradmore style, not Tradmore that you would see today, but like if you were to go back and you look into like maybe the first couple of issues of Luther Strode, there's some of that style. He pulls from it a lot. There's a little bit of Daniel Warren Johnson in there. There's one moment to where Amon is like doing the creepy villain thing where his face is all covered in shadow and his mouth is just wide and smile. Kind of has a Death Note feel to it, if that makes the connection. It's not pure manga, but I think the influence is certainly there, especially when you look at some of his other stuff. I kind of understand where Matt's coming from with the story feeling vanilla. It wasn't necessarily what I expected from Tom Taylor. And I wonder, part of me wonders if that is because what I've read of Tom Taylor is mostly, I've read a few things that aren't steeped in the big two, but most of what Tom Taylor has delivered that I've loved has been big two stuff. He wrote Injustice. He's currently writing Suicide Squad. If you jump over to Marvel, he did a really, really good one shot that's kind of a Spider-Man Hulk mashup. A lot of what he does is really hang on to these continuity aspects and weave them into a story. Sometimes it's really snarky. Sometimes it's very underhanded. But he uses the continuity that these two publishers have to write really compelling, really fun, really sometimes new and adventurous takes on these characters that you like and you love because you know the history of the quote unquote mainstream character. Like what makes those things cool is the changes that he's making to the character profile that you know and love. And I wonder, and I'm not saying that this is the case, but I can't help but wonder if part of what made this a little bit of a different feel was the fact that we don't know these people. Like we don't know the subtle differences in what we should expect from them versus what we're getting. I didn't know if that played into kind of the way you were feeling, Matt, but that's where I was with it too. But I also feel like with a story like this, and this is I love floppies. I'm not going to take the position that I think everything should be told in trade form, but that's also I think the hindrance that we get from the modern market in the way that we get it here in the States, where they have to hook you with that first issue. And so the first issue is going to be heavy and action oriented, where if you go and you read the way that other countries or other cultures do manga stories or do sequential art in general, France, who largely does things in graphic novel and trade format, they might not get into the deep part of the story in the first 40 pages. It's all set up and the story really takes off from there. I think having to try to hook people with excitement and enticement before you really get into what the nuance of the story maybe underserves a story like this. But again, I also kind of liked where this went. I felt like it was just kind of supposed to be an action story using a plot that we know, but is going to get a twist.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with the fact that I kind of am, I've been a floppy guy my whole life, and I'm kind of to the point where I'm leaning towards creator-owned stuff that's only a 4 or 5 issue miniseries anyways. Mm-hmm. Them doing those in trade format, because you have situations like this where you read the first issue and it's clearly a setup for what's going to happen, and sometimes does leave you a little bit lukewarm. But again, I didn't feel that way with this book. I felt like it gave me everything I needed to know to care about the next issue, what was going to happen. But that's not to say that I don't see what you guys are talking about either. It for whatever reason, there was a hook there for me that you guys didn't get. And that's okay too.
Matt, you got any final? Like, I'm kind of curious because Matt, you latched on to Suicide Squad, and that's not normally a title that you would latch on to. And like, I wonder what the comparison is between that and Tom's writing in that and Tom's writing in Seven Secrets is for you.
Well, I mean, in Suicide Squad, it was just a better narrative. It was more at the end of the first issue of Suicide Squad. There was definitely a hook there that made you want. There's a very significant hook there that made you want to read the second issue and to see how the dynamics of this team was going to evolve. On top of just the dialogue itself, within this the context of the story was so strong. I just didn't get any of that out of this book. I just didn't, there was nothing to hook me into the next one. I didn't, I don't know. And the story itself, I mean, Guarded Secrets, Secret Warriors. I mean, this feels just very recycled to me. It just seems very unoriginal. I was really surprised by all that.
Did what I say, like the thought process that I had with this, there not being a large amount of continuity in this, did that make sense, or was I kind of off base with that?
I mean, it being the origin of a new story, yeah, obviously there can't be a lot of continuity there. But that, I don't see that as a weakness. That's inherent with a new storyline being started. So I'm not faulting the book for what is naturally going to be part of a new story. It just didn't start off with a hook for me. I guess that's just the bottom line. That's what I keep coming to. Nothing hooked me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's fair because, hooks are different for every person. What's going to hook one person on a book won't hook another person, and vice versa.
And what's in, and maybe this is going to be one of those stories, because there's plenty of my favorite writer stories that don't start off with a hook. I only stayed on them because I know that I have faith, I should say, that they were going to deliver a great story. Mm-hmm. Like my favorite, one of my favorite things ever is Garth Ennis's Punisher Max run. Well, if you read the first issue of that, unless you are really into the Punisher, there's not a great hook in that first issue. Same thing with The Boys. If you go back and read the first issue of The Boys, I went back and read it recently, and I'm like, wow, there's really nothing in this first issue that's super compelling to make you go to the second one. So it's not to say that this doesn't turn out to be, a kick-ass series. Right. I'm just talking strictly my experience with the first issue. I can only assume it's going to be great because Tom Taylor, he's a rare miss guy. The guy's freaking dependable when it comes to great stories.
Right. And that's where I was saying, like, I can't help but wonder if maybe this is meant to be more of a long form story that will be better served in a collected format. Or that will be better served viewed in hindsight as a setup and establishment thing that really lays the groundwork for the best that's yet to come. And like I said, what bothers me about that aspect is not the content or the craft of the actual issue. It's that we now live in an age where if a book doesn't hit the certain amount of numbers, it'll get canceled, which is unfortunate because it makes them work a first issue in a way that may not, like there may be a book that is not canceled that the first issue is worked in a certain way that doesn't serve the entirety of the story versus a first issue that actually serves the entirety of the story very well. That just doesn't grab people and hook them into picking up the second issue, which is a danger, especially right now when things are getting thrown by the wayside left and right.
Well, I
What
think
editorial is
studios,
supposed to help with.
yeah.
True.
Well, I also think that, publishers like Boom Studios, you're going to get a little bit more play to develop your story than you are, at other places, let's say.
Right. I can see that.
You go to a smaller publisher for that reason. And not that Boom's one of the smaller ones, but they're not one of the biggest ones either. So you go to those publishers for that reason, to give you a chance to develop your story, because they're less likely to cancel you on the first issue.
Yeah, for sure. Like thinking of and I think maybe that might be a little bit of alleviating that fear that I had, because even in knowing that I said it was Boom, it's Tom Taylor, it's a bigger name. So maybe
right.
I guess I'm in my brain, I'm subconsciously linking it to a publisher like Image, which would absolutely do what I was talking about. Whereas, you're exactly right. Boom might give them the play that they need. Because they don't have the pressure, because they're not the quote unquote big three. They know they're not going to put up the huge numbers. And I think that that maybe takes some pressure off. And I did not consider that.
And again, I've been seeing a lot of talk from different creators that I follow on social media about getting away from floppies for creator-owned stuff just because of this issue. A lot of them are talking about going to trades just because of this.
It's not even creator-owned stuff. There's a lot of speculation that's absolutely what DC is angling for right now with what they're having to do.
Well, I mean, that's what Matt said right at the beginning of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the DC Fallout thing is going to be super interesting, because there's some major things happening over there. I mean, what the choices they've made in their new leadership in their comics line is really hard to wrap your head around, unless they're going to do something radical. I mean, they just put somebody in charge of the DC line that's coming from esports video games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's hard to wrap your mind around that unless they're going to make some pretty radical changes. And they're making radical changes already, but how much more radical they're going to get? I mean, all these titles that they cut, my gosh, and they had just reduced their number of titles. Was it last year?
Right.
Earlier this year, whenever that happened.
So it makes the change in distributor make a whole lot more sense, to be honest with you, if they're getting away from floppies.
Yeah, I mean, that's something else I thought about at the time, because at the time when they made that, they walked away from Diamond with no forewarning to speak of whatsoever. They gave themselves no time to make that adjustment. All I could think is, that is absurd. It's so stupid. I mean, even me as a layman, not in the industry, knows you have to make planned adjustments to your distribution level instead of saying, negative, stick a fork in it, and then figure it out after the fact. It leads credence that there, again, is a foreshadowing of something radical is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as far bringing, I'm kind of like both of you, whereas I side-eye the idea of bringing in somebody from esports specifically from that. But I was talking to our buddy Bill Zanowitz the other day, and he made a really good point and I forget the name of the woman that he was speaking of, but a publisher, I want to say it was either in the early 90s or the mid 80s, DC hired a publisher. They gave the publishing duties and rights to a lady who was not from comics. And this is, again, his opinion. I don't know enough about it to speak one way or another, but what he, in his opinion, which I value a lot, she was one of the best publishers DC ever had.
Well, where'd she come from?
And see, that's what I don't know. And I'd have
that's everything. That's everything.
I'd have to get him on to find out.
Sure. Without knowing where she came from, that's not really a point to be made. I mean, the whole thing is, this is a person coming from video games,
which are story driven as well.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about distribution, though, brother. The distribution, stories. Yeah, I mean, stories and development and all that is obviously going to translate.
Well, and if you look at video games, they've switched to mostly digital in distribution.
Yeah, and that was pointed out in that article I read when it announced that the esports person.
It will be interesting as a reader. I've always said that I enjoy the floppies, that I am also very seriously considering switching to trades myself as far as reading.
Well, there's definitely an argument to be made for collected trades, and the monthly floppies are not as good a business model. I mean, if from a pure bottom line standpoint, they're not. But regardless, I'm still a weekly floppies
I am too. That's why I haven't switched.
But but admittedly, the reason for that is I like the tradition of picking up my books every week and getting my regular fix of any given story that I want, instead of waiting God knows how long for that collected once every 6 months. I got to wait for Immortal Hulk to come out. Go fuck yourself.
Well, it makes it much more of a traditional book type wait, right?
I need small fixes on a regular basis. You can't starve me for 6 months and then throw that at me. You can't do that.
I think there's a side to that they're not understanding as well, and that's it right there, is that we've been so conditioned to it's almost like a soap opera, right? You want your weekly update on your characters.
Well, and I
or
think
monthly in this case, but yeah,
something that's inescapable, and I don't see any way around this. If you were to move a monthly series to twice a year, I cannot help but believe your circulation is going to significantly drop. If you're not giving somebody that story on a regular basis, I cannot help but believe the number of people that are going to disengage from that story is going to increase. I myself included, I'll only stick around for the very best if you're going to give it to me once every.
Yeah, I think that's the case.
That's true, but that's also considering the pool of people that are already conditioned to do that. And I'm not even saying that won't be the case. I'm just throwing out the alternative here. Like, you think about like the best-selling comic in the world right now that isn't called One Piece is the Captain Underpants book. It's the best.
But that's distribution. That's not in comic book stores.
I agree. I agree with, and that's what I'm saying. You've got somebody, like, if that's what they're doing, if they're talking about changing distribution models, and they're talking about branching out and trying to attract people to read these things that aren't within the four walls of the comic books, those people aren't conditioned to that monthly thing. Just like kids who are buying, graphic novels, or people who pick up the lots of comics from places like Barnes and Noble, whatever, or what have you, or people who read, stuff on webtoons, they aren't conditioned to do that. And that like, I'm not saying it's going to work. I honestly don't really, in my heart of hearts, believe that it will. But if they're attracting those readers, if that's their goal, then it's just like getting people to watch a film versus people who watch a weekly television series. If those people if they just want to watch the film and they're not conditioned to needing those small fixes, which I think you hit the point, it's a conditioning, then they might be more willing to buy that and read that versus it being a chore to pick up your books every week. And again, I'm just like you. I like picking up my books every week. But if we're talking about an audience who is not us, an audience who is not
but we're the model of comic book fandom.
Well, in that comparison you made of film versus TV, it's two different things. Because what we're talking about moving to OG, this trade paperback thing is taking that monthly show and turning it into 6 episodes released twice a year.
Right.
How many people are going to stick around for that same show 6 months later? How many are going to drop off and forget about it? I can't help but believe that's nonetheless. Now, here's the caveat to that argument. Your distribution's got to radically change. If you do that, it's got to be, you got to get in front of a hell of a lot more people. And where are you going to do that?
I think number one, they're looking at digital really hard. They have to. And again, you're right in that, but look what Netflix did. There are more people, like there are lots of shows that more people binge watch the seasons that come out, television shows from, be it HBO or ABC or whatever. More people binge watch the seasons on Hulu and Netflix and actually sign in to watch it every week for an hour.
But that's because of distribution.
That's because of distribution. And that's what I'm saying. I think that they are absolutely looking at a different distribution model, putting those books in more places, putting those books out on digital. I mean, hell, we were talking with Justin, 2 months ago, and like his subscribership on Webtoons, which is something that you can get at your convenience, which doesn't have the direct market comic book store customer base, has got like over 1 million. Like, I forget how many he said, but literally a shit ton of followers that, like, if those same people bought a monthly book that Justin Jordan put out from the direct model, he'd be a fucking multi-millionaire by this point.
Well, he was talking about downloads because part of his argument was that how many of those are illegal downloads.
He talked about both.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, through Webtoons, you don't get illegal downloads through Webtoons. Like his Urban Animal book, he wasn't talking about illegal downloads through that.
Urban Animal.
Yeah, he was specifically talking about Urban Animal. In the aspect that I'm talking about, like, he's got a bonkers number of people who read that.
And that comes out how often?
I think that comes out, I want to say it comes out every month, but it's on Webtoons and people binge read it because they can track that. They can see when it's being read. But either way, it's putting it at the reader's convenience, and in a place that it's easily accessible. Which, again, I'm not saying that that's the best model. It's not the model that DC is maybe going to follow or whatever. But I think that you are 1,000% right that they are completely looking at a change in the distribution, which means a change in the way that we think about comics being packaged, presented, and advertised to a public, where they may not be trying to reach the people who are coming into comic shops. They may be trying to reach people who, walk past a Snickers bar, pass a Snickers advertisement in Walmart or Kroger, who aren't inclined to read the book, but with a code that says, hey, you can read this full story here. And who knows if that'll work or not. I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm just saying, like, it's one that makes sense to me as print publications, periodicals, and the direct market continue to be a dwindling market.
It's definitely interesting times in the world of comic books right now.
Yeah,
and quite honestly, a year from now, how we consume and receive our comics is going to be much different than what we currently are doing, because Marvel will follow in some way, shape, or form, depending on how it works for DC.
Well, and if DC makes this radical departure, what is going to be the fallout to the comic book shops? It's going to be dramatic.
Yeah, that's 30% of their income and draw, and that's a terrifying thought. Like, that's like, and that's like, I feel bad. My concerns are actually for the comic book retailers, because I don't think that you can lose 30% of your sales base and be functional.
Yeah, something's going to give there.
Yeah,
something's going to give there.
Yeah, the fallout's going to be long and spread out over many different levels of this.
Yeah, I mean, change has always fucked the little guy, right?
I mean, no, but in this sort of world, yes.
Well, and I shudder to think that our local comic book shop is going to go away. I don't like that. I don't like that thought at all.
I don't either, because like that's the reason we all met. That's how we all know each other. And there's no happy thought about that. That being said, and we've had this conversation as well, a lot of, not necessarily our local comic shop, but a lot of local comic shops still operate out of a model that they were using back in 1991, and that also doesn't work. And there has to be, and I don't know what that is, but there has to be some adaptability there.
You've got to go beyond just selling comic books.
Yeah, or what you offer. And that's another thing where, changing distributors or using multiple distributors, like that might be what happens. It's not even necessarily that you're going to offer something besides comics, but you're going to have to change the way you get your comics. I mean, our comic shop in and of itself, I think if they offered a larger manga section, we had this conversation with Jerry. If they offered a larger manga section and they advertised that they had a larger manga section, I think they'd bring in a different customer base. If they had some of the, use different distributors to get like drawn and quarterly books in, or to pull in some of the OGNs that don't go through Diamond, stuff that's, like I go into Barnes and Noble every 2 weeks and find books that I've never seen before. And inevitably those books are what ends up getting talked about with Eisner Awards and stuff like that. It's breaking away from, we only order our stuff through Diamond versus we offer stuff from multiple places. And who knows? I'm not even saying that that's functional or feasible for a lot of small comic shops, but the changes are coming, whether we like it or not. The status quo is not going to continue to be functional, feasible, or profitable. And so they have to make some changes somewhere.
I mean, there's no doubt that changes are going to be made whether they have to or not. Right. So, I mean, they're coming regardless of what you or I or Matt or the local comic book store companies think. It's coming. The changes are coming.
Yeah.
All across the market.
For better or worse.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the stories are still going to be told. As comic book fans, you're still going to find a way to get those comic books.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of how they're going to be distributed to you.
According to what DC has done recently, a lot of those stories are not going to be told.
They'll come back. Do you think there's never going to be an Aquaman book again, or an Aquaman story again?
I mean, the problem is what is being done right now. I mean, there's a lot of those really good stories have just been axed.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like it's Aquaman.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't collecting comics in the 90s when it almost crashed, but I assume it was very similar to this.
No, it was much more dramatic and, driven by just bad content.
No, I mean, as far as when the changes occurred, I'm sure there was lots of titles that were cut that people weren't happy about.
Oh, sure.
No,
I would think so. I mean, I was like 5 then, though, so because I'm a baby, and fuckers are old.
It is what it is.
Hey, that's another argument for the collected edition and trade format form. I don't have to worry about the OGNs or the Bond SNAs or the YA graphic novels that are even DC YA graphic novels getting canceled before I get the entire story, because the entire stories are told and they're distributed. So that I mean, like I'm verklempt. I really am upset about Venditti not getting to tell the entirety of what he had planned for Hawkland, because I think it's been a great run and it's been an important run, and it sucks it's getting cut short. But if that had been packaged and delivered and all dropped off in one thing, that wouldn't be happening right now. And I, as a fan, reader,
how does that translate to what we're talking about? Because it's been canceled on what issue number? What?
I think it'll hit 30 or 32. I think is what it'll inevitably get to.
I mean, you're talking about
if he can wrap that up within then, and it can serve a package deal, then it'll be fine. I think he's just having a flex, but it's the difference in planning a 100-issue run and only getting 82. You still flex and you end your story and you finish it where you can get it to, but it's always the missing out about what could have been, and the writers not getting to fully develop the story that they had in mind and having to make
but that's always been the case when you work for any company that you're using their intellectual property.
Oh yeah.
Any time that sales drop, you stand the chance of not being able to finish your story.
And that'll happen with, if it's trade paperbacks or not, because in this example, if he's on issue, say, 30, but his story was canceled in the second release. So you're talking about 6 collected issues for one edition. I mean, that's not really going to change what happens when a book is canceled. I mean, it doesn't make them immune to cancellation, I guess.
No, I get that. What I'm saying is what you're talking about is like breaking these things down into 6-issue collections of a larger story. What I'm talking about are kind of what DC has done with their YA graphic novel thing, where they still have a continuity, but what's in those stories are complete, well-rounded, like done stories in 200 pages. There's no cliffhanger. There's going to be another story with those characters coming, and it'll open up a new book. But it's the same way that they do with novels. Like there's a larger ongoing story there, but the end of that story does not necessarily like you can read that story, put it down, and walk away, and still have some fulfillment there, as opposed to the cliffhanger being what drives you to pick up the next book, which is the same thing that they do in, why like they do in novels. You can read, you go all the way back. You can read, oh, my brain just shut off. Hercule Poirot. You can read Agatha Christie novels and get an amazing adventure, an incredible story with Hercule Poirot, who is an insane detective who has got an incredible lineage throughout the entirety of her stories. But even if you only read Murder on the Orient Express, you're fine. Like that's like you don't feel like you're missing out on anything in your broader story.
What you're talking about is a complete shift in the way superhero stories are told.
Right.
And I don't know that that's going to be the case at this point. It might be. It may be. I mean, they may step completely away from the story arc scenario and go to mini stories.
Dynamic shifts, man. Like we said, crazy things are happening, and I don't think anything's off the table at this point. We'll see. But people, the way stories are told now in floppy form, they require you to have patience. They require you to have a extensive attention span. And I don't know that people have that anymore. So I think that's also part of the reason that everybody's looking for different ways to tell stories.
For sure.
But who can say? But you know what I do want to hear about?
Stories we read this week.
Stories we read this week. Craig, are you a mind reader? Is that what happened?
No.
You just know?
I am not. Your segues are amazing.
What'd you read this week, Craig?
I read a book called Happiness Will Follow by Archia Press, written and drawn by Mike Hawthorne, colored by Sam Bowen and Ari Polchinski, I think is how you say his name, and lettered by Clem Robbins. So this is an autobiographical OGN by Mike Hawthorne. For those of you who don't know, Mike is an Eisner-nominated artist for his work on Queen Country and Harvey Award-nominated artist for his work on Umbra. Both of those books are books that you definitely should read. He's also worked on other books such as Fear Agent, Deadpool, Conan, Road of Kings, and many other books. This book tells the story of Mike's life from a toddler through, just a little bit beyond his college years. Mike and his single mom live in New York when he falls victim to a death curse. His mom relocates them to York, Pennsylvania. Now, a death curse to us may sound like something crazy, and no one's going to do that. But it should be pointed out that Mike and his mom are Puerto Rican Americans, and their culture very much believes in things like Santeria and Brujeria. And his mom has practiced both. So when they get this death curse, she immediately upends their whole life, quits her job of 15 years, and moves them to a new state to start over. Mike's father is a white man from New York that did the disappearing act when Mike was a baby. Mike really never got to know him. In the book, he states his mom stole his last name from Mike, and that was all he ever got. The book goes on to detail the poverty that he and his mother lived in, living in the ghettos of York, places with names like the Jungle, which is a not very subtle racist nickname due to the amount of people of color that live there. And throughout Mike's life, he dealt with abuse from his mother, and at times he tries to justify that abuse, and at other times his anger for it comes through in the book. Not only did she consistently beat him, she often lied about everyone in their family and even her own personal stories of her life that she would share with him. Mike has a sister who is 15 years his senior. She had a different father who Mike learns later is actually his uncle. Turns out he's his mom's sister's husband. He isn't allowed to see his sister because his mom has cut her out of their life. See, his sister is a lesbian and his mom is a homophobe. And at one point, she even tells Mike that his sister, who has been in and out of trouble her whole life, has been killed, which we find out later is another lie. This book overall is an incredible story of a young child dealing with his own anger issues, which he does not shy away from. And different points in the book, he's bullies people. He is an arsonist for a while as a child. He doesn't shy away from these things, much like the book Mouse, where it leaves all the scabs on for you to see. Mm-hmm. Mike shows them all. He deals with the culture of being a mixed race child living in the ghettos of a country that hates the poor and hates brown people, and dealing with his own abuse and how he eventually rose above it, mostly through his art. This book is raw, emotional, and at times heartbreaking. Mike has overcome so much in his life to be the person that he is today. I don't personally know Mike Hawthorne. I've never met him. But based on this story, I can't imagine. Well, I mean, I can imagine because he gives us a very detailed view of it. But I certainly never had to live in the conditions he did.
Yeah.
And to come to the point that he is now is just absolutely amazing. So, really solid book. It hits you in all the emotional spots. At one point, his mom tells him, "You're now too big. It hurts me when I slap you open-handed, so I'm going to start using my fist on you." Mm. And he talks about there's only been 3 times in his life that he was ever knocked out, and the first time was his mom, and that one hurts the worst. So, it's pretty raw and emotional. Like I said, he doesn't cover anything up. He puts it all out there for you to see, and he doesn't. He goes on to tell that his mom's not a monster. This is just who she was. Now, us looking at it from the outside, of course, we can think things differently, but she definitely struggled throughout life and took it out on him and blamed him. But it's more than just the abuse that you get in the book. It's the living in poverty and watching his mom have to beg for food, turning into drug dealers so that they can pay their way, all kinds of just a crazy environment that he had to grow up in.
What's that phrase I always say? Desperate people in desperate situations will act desperately.
Yeah.
That's
and you don't get the best person in those. You don't get the best version of people in those situations either. Had his dad not walked out on them, who knows what their life would have been. But again, had his mom not had a child with a married man, who knows what their life might have been.
Yeah.
So
I can't imagine the sheer amount of personal strength it takes to bury your soul into something like that other people are going to read.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And again, to not cover it up, I mean, he doesn't make excuses for his actions.
Right.
He says, I was angry. I was angry because this stuff was happening to me. I was angry because my life was shit. So I acted in ways I shouldn't have, And his mom does save him from going to juvenile hall at one point.
Right.
And he says there was only one more fire he ever lit after that, So, I mean, to put that out there that, hey, yeah, I was an arsonist as a kid. I was a bully, but these things happened to me. And this was the hand I was dealt.
Yeah. Look at the pain that was driving it. I mean,
yeah, exactly. And he talks about how the art of the 80s, because this is his teenage years were in the 80s. So he must be about my age. Talking about how music and dancing, which, he's talking about, I think, break dancing at that point, and his art were things that helped people rise above those situations.
Right.
The creativity that came out of the poorer communities in the ghettos of the urban cities. It's really a great book.
Where'd you pick this up at?
I got it at Capel.
Okay,
It's
so
a local comic book store.
Okay, you can order it through the LCS. Okay.
Yeah, it's Archia, so any LCS should be able to pick it up for you.
Nice.
And I'm sure it's on other places. Any bookstore. It was in my pull list. I guess I must have seen it and signed up for it. I didn't remember it. I told Matt when I got it, I said, I must have been listening to Caleb this week. This doesn't seem like a book I would normally pick up. But I was glad I did, because I read it and really thoroughly enjoyed the book and the story.
It's great, and I haven't read this yet, and I'm gonna do my due diligence and go out and pick this up, because it's a story that I think I would get a lot out of, that I would really appreciate. I think most people would. But we were talking earlier, having a conversation about something different. This idea, there's a certain segment of even comics fandom that pretty hateful community. But they like to tout that they have members of minority groups, and so therefore they can't be a hate group, which is largely just bullshit. And I think this, like Mike's book, speaks a lot to that. Like, no, that you can, his mom was a member of a minority community, but she was still homophobic. He's around these people that are also experiencing degradation for who they are, and they transfer that degradation on other groups. And I think that speaks to that transference.
And he talks about, he talks about the fact that he was mixed race and dealing with, he's a blue-eyed man living in a Puerto Rican culture. Right. He talks about those things. His daughter very much looks Puerto Rican, even though her mom is white. So she struggles with people thinking she should speak Spanish and things like that, because he deals with his children now a little bit in the book. Not much, but he shows where he's ended up in life, but yeah, for sure there is definitely bigotry within different subcultures.
Yeah, and speaking as a gay man, that's what I was telling you guys. Like, racism and sexism is rampant within the gay community. It's right. It's terrible, because it doesn't absolve you of your own conditioning. Those intersections of identity carry through no matter what you experience too. And a lot of times, like we were talking about with Mike's story, it seems like that hurt and that pain from either him or his mother, people in his community, sometimes that just manifests as hurt to other people for numerous terrible reasons.
Well, and he talks about, if somebody did them wrong in his mom's eyes, she just would go through, and it was before the digital age, but she would take scissors and just cut them out of the pictures and symbolically cut them out of their lives, and anybody that knows anything about the Hispanic community in large, and including the Puerto Rican community, is they're very big on their family. And
the familial structures are integral.
And for him, he's never even been to Puerto Rico, so to see these things in that she separated him from all of that, he resents her for that, but also kind of understands it later, I guess is the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
And in his own way has forgiven her for things.
Mm-hmm.
But how about having a sister that you're told is dead and you don't find out is still alive until after your mother dies? It's, and this is a community that's big on their family, but she cut her out because she was gay, and But then he talks about times that he would walk in and see his mom looking at a picture of his sister and just sitting there crying.
Right.
You know, because she wasn't part of their life. You know, so, you know, he knows that there was some mental illness in there as well, I think, you know. And not that he tries to justify his mom's actions, because he certainly doesn't. But he points out different things that attributed to it. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, explanation doesn't. Explanation
It's not
and justification.
justification.
Yeah, are
That's
two
right.
way different things.
That's right.
And hopefully, inevitably, it sounds like this book is about. You're gonna have me reading this book feeling some kind of way. Like I'm already just like, ooh, it's some shit, Mike. What you doing?
You're definitely, if you read this book and you don't feel anything from it, you need to probably be checked to see if you're still alive. That's you're gonna feel something from it.
Those things are heavy, but that's part of the human condition, right? That's
and it didn't take me long to read. Maybe an hour to get through the entire thing. And it's beautiful. It's absolutely a beautiful book, which anybody that's ever seen Mike's art before would know.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely beautiful. It's well done. I love the way that he draws himself throughout different periods of his life. You know, he very much has some 80s hairstyles going on and stuff like that. He doesn't hide from that. You know, again, if you're going to write that kind of book, you've got to allow it to be its real version. Mm-hmm. And I think he does that. If you try, you know, if you read a book like this, you can tell if somebody's trying to, you know, look back on it through rose-colored glasses, or trying to cover up their own flaws in it. And he doesn't do that.
Right.
So read it.
Damn.
You guys can borrow mine if you need to, until, you know, I will be glad to lend it to you. So
yeah, send that sucker my way, and I'm going to go ahead and get it ordered too.
Will do.
I need to check that out.
I will do it.
Matt, do we want to flip a coin to see who has to follow that, or how do we do? What are we?
I don't have any coins.
Well, I'll jump in next. Kind of follow that up just a little bit, if you're okay with that, Matt, or if you're ready to go.
Go for
it. So the
wait. Actually, no. Go ahead.
You should. Okay. Yeah. Go.
Well, wait. No. Okay. Go ahead.
Look, I'm indecisive. I rely on you guys to tell me what to do. So the book that I read this week is not nearly as poignant or an emotive as that tale. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. Not the exact opposite. It's still a dark book, but it's something that you would sink into for escapism after reading a book like that. That I need to kind of preface it a little bit, if you are cool with that. So, and I've spoken about this before on the show. My introduction to role playing, to RPGing, right? It was not Dungeons and Dragons the way a lot of people is. It wasn't the sword and sorcery stuff. It was actually through a game called Vampire the Masquerade, which was put out by this company called White Wolf. Vampire the Masquerade was this D20 tabletop. You could LARP it if you want to, but we didn't because we weren't that energetic or creative, just to be real honest. But it's this world that exists in our world. It takes the shell, the skeleton of reality as we know it, the cities that we live in, and it creates a hierarchy and an empire, if you will, of vampire culture that exists just to the left of the screen, if you can consider it that way. And that's part of the Masquerade. The whole point is that they are actually the vampires are actually the powers that be that really do dictate the way the world goes, and the way that human nature is allowed to exist, and they actually run things. We just don't know it. There is a lot of quote unquote politics, internal politics of this book. Every city is ran by a prince. Your players, whatever level you are, you're a member of a different clan. There's 12 different clans. Each of those clans have their own attributes and their own goals as an organization. So, I mean, it's very, if you play the game right, the game is not a hack and slash game, although it can be. It can be a shoot 'em up if you want it to be. But there's a lot of layers to the game. There's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of quiet moments that really requires you to be a politician in some senses, or to be conniving or cunning, or to use your words as a player to get through the game. Well, White Wolf kind of died out somewhere in the mid 2000s. It quit being a thing. It quit getting a lot of attention. There's been a couple of different attempts to reboot it, but those attempts have largely been, for the most part, unsuccessful. Now, the cool thing about this game is they did what a lot of pop culture things do, using air quotes. Like, they released novels, they released comic books, they released a lot of stuff to tie into this to help garner attention. I mean, some of the novels are amazing, incredible stuff. Especially if you want to get into the Dark Ages stuff. Like, the Dark Ages vampire books are just chef's kiss. Mwah. Fantastic. Well, my little favorite publisher, one of the little publishers that is high up on my list of things right now is Vault Comics. And Vault Comics, as I was flipping through a previews catalog about 4 months ago, let us know that they are putting out a Vampire the Masquerade comic book. And on one hand, I was super excited, right? Like, I was like, yes, like little 2004 Caleb in his Jinko jeans and, metal t-shirts, who's listening to The Cure and crying in his bedroom, because that's what people do, was very excited about this. I was just like, oh, this is going to be awesome. Like, my inner kid was just like, fuck yeah, this is going to bring back some cool memories. On the other hand, I was a little bit nervous, right? Because licensed comics, I don't know if y'all know this or not, licensed comics don't exactly have a stellar reputation. Like, they're not, they're not always great. In fact,
they're really not.
They can be bad at times. But this was actually, when I got to reading into who the creative teams were, it alleviated my fears a little bit, put me at ease, because this is written by none other. It's actually kind of an anthology comic. Each comic has two different stories. The main story is written by none other than Mr. Tim Seeley, and the backup story is being written by Teeny and Blake Howard. Now, I think Blake is Teeny's brother. I'm not 1,000% sure on that, but I'm pretty sure it's a brother. And
I'm not either, honestly.
Both incredible writers, really, really good writers. So when I saw their names attached, I'm like, okay, I can breathe easier now. And plus, it's Vault. Like Vault is dope. Vault does some really cool stuff. I read the plot. You read the plot. We know how that goes. It's goodness. So I got this book in. I picked it up. Finally, was reading for it, and I just was grinning from ear to ear. I was so pleasantly. I wasn't surprised, because I trust in Tim Seeley and Teeny, but it was nice. It was like going back and checking out some of those novels for the first time. So the first story in Vampire the Masquerade it's called Winter's Teeth. And this is going to be the main story of this book. And it's written by, like I said, Tim Seeley. It's being drawn by Devmala Premnik, and it's being colored and lettered by Addison Duke, and Antworld. Antworld is doing the letters. So this is a fun little story. It's the neat thing about this story is, if you're not familiar with White Wolf or the Vampire the Masquerade game, the story actually, it is going to let that world grow on you through a character, if that makes sense. So you don't necessarily need to know everything about the Camarilla or the Sabbat, or how they have princes, or the political structure of the cities, or who the anarchs are, or the fact that there are hunters and werewolves, because one of the characters in the story also doesn't know that. And we don't really know a whole lot about this character. Just start off with, the book begins with this young woman running. She's bloodied. She looks like she's been in a fight she's got going on, and she's running pretty swift, like she's in a hurry, and she dives into a train car that got coal in it, and she just hides in that as the train takes off and gets on down the tracks. We don't know what her deal is. Who's she running from? Why is she running? Who can say? I have zero clues about that. But the story then jumps to Minneapolis, which the Twin Cities, if you're again, not familiar with Vampire the Masquerade, the Twin Cities are where a lot of the story from Vampire takes place. Like the Twin Cities were just kind of ripe for a dark and seedy, gritty, grimy, goth-based underworld.
I mean, it's Minnesota. What else are you going to do other than be a vampire?
I mean, look, Saint Paul is a special place. So, but in this city, there's a woman. She's a vampire. She's actually a sheriff. Not in the sense of what we think of sheriffs. She's a sheriff in the vampire hierarchy, but her job is to ensure that the masquerade is being upheld, that the humans, the mundane people, don't realize the behind the scenes stuff, that level of subterfuge is recognized, respected, and that the veil isn't dropped. But somebody, God damn it, has dropped the veil. And she's upset about it because now she's got to do the hard job. She's got to do some dirty work. This one of the vampire underlings has got himself a little human girlfriend, and his human girlfriend is a blogger. She's somebody who likes to, she's one of those assholes on Instagram who's a quote unquote influencer, which I hate that phrase, by the way. They get a lot of likes by putting out pictures or typing out things of cultural interest and positioning themselves in a certain way. She's probably a decent person, but in this one, I'm going to pretend she's not, because she dies hard. And the whole reason she has to die is because her boyfriend has let her know that he's a vampire. He did the bad thing. He told the secret to a fucking blogger. You just can't do this stuff. Like, when's she going to get bored and just let everybody who reads her blog know, or who follows her on Instagram know, that vampires are real? Like, this is big doings. And so Cicely can't let this ride. She just, look, it's too dangerous. And so to punish this vampire underling, she just goes ahead and takes homegirl, this influencer, off the board. She goes ahead and just drains her, which, breaks his heart, because they were, this was in fact true love. They were deep into it. And just to drive the nail home, as she's walking out the door, Cicely lets the dude know that, hey, one of the things that I can do, one of the powers I have, because she's a bruja, that's her clan, is I can tell that she was actually telling the truth. She probably wasn't going to tell anybody, and she was deeply in love with you. So, look what you did, fuck off. And just really drives home the hate in that moment as she walks out the door and goes to carry on about her bitterness. And her bitterness is, as part of her job, her position as a sheriff, is making sure that the city is ran and that the prince of this city is happy. The prince in this city is actually a woman. Prince in the vampire world is not gendered nomenclature. It's like saying the president of something. And so the prince in this world is a vampire who is a female vampire, but Cicely actually works for an underling. This guy who, we don't know what clan he is, but he uses blood magic. So there's a good chance that he's a Tremere magician, which the Tremere are people who aren't natural vampires. They become vampires through the occult. But she kind of works for him. She does his dirty work, but part of that dirty work is making sure that the prince is not going to be usurped. And in the Twin Cities right now, as in lots of things in the vampire universe, there's hushed whispers, there's these tones, these conversations that there's going to be an uprising, and that people aren't happy with the prince, and they're going to take her power away. And this might not look so good for Cicely's boss, because Cicely's boss is actually a reformed anarch. He's a vampire who existed on the outside for a long time. He was kind of a radical. He wanted to bring down the Camarilla structure of the masquerade, but now he's past that now. He's kind of bought into the hierarchy, mainly because it's made him a really wealthy vampire and put him in a position of power. But he really needs to squash this growing uprising before the prince starts to look at him sideways and be like, hey, you used to be an anarch. Maybe you still have some of that in you. Maybe you're the one who's doing this and takes all their power away. It's all political machinations, from the highest aspect to the lowest aspect. And one of the things that he says to Cicely is, look, I need more of you. So here's what you're going to do. you're going to go out and you're going to create another vampire. You are going to sire another kindred, which is what they call each other, because I need another one of you. I need somebody to help you do your job. And by producing another one of you, it'll gain us favor and another ally to the prince. It'll make us look good. So he gives her this instruction, and she doesn't want to. Like, she doesn't like to follow these rules. She likes to just kind of be allowed to do her job. And she really doesn't like the politics of it all. She just wants to kind of, go to work every day or every night, technically, because she's a vampire and sun burns. It's, bad stuff. But you really don't know how old she is. And it turns out she's, if she were a human, she would be an old woman at this time. And she carries some of that baggage with her that she didn't let go. And so as she's gotten this instruction to go out and create another vampire, in the back of her mind, her whole time, she is thinking of her sister. And her sister is an old woman at this time. And she still goes and visits her sister, but her sister has got dementia, and she visits her under the guise of being her niece. She's a younger woman who comes to check on her older aunt. And that's how she gets away with talking to the doctors and the nurses and the home care providers that are there with her. And she gets there, she shows up, she pays the niece, and she knows in the back of her mind that she could cure her sister. If she changes her, if she turns her into a vampire, her disease would die along with her human body, and she would rise again as somebody that wasn't afflicted with this dementia, but it wouldn't quite be her sister. And so she has to weigh this back and forth. And by the way, her sister is awesome. She's apparently an old 70s punk rock chick who doesn't, part of her dementia, she doesn't realize that she's now an older woman, and she thinks this is Minneapolis during the punk era. And so she goes and she puts on her old punk gear, and she's ready to go hit the punk bars. And Cicely has to talk her down. She's like, hey, let's just chill for a little bit. The Longhorn doesn't open up for another few hours. And, the Soldiers of Suicide, or whatever this punk band is, they don't start playing till after midnight. So we don't want to be lame and get there early. So let's just chill and have a few quiet moments. And it's her way of spending more time with her sister, but also mitigating this idea that her sister doesn't know who or where or when she is. But inevitably, Cicely decides that if she changes her sister, it won't do what she needs to do. It'll be somebody else who isn't her sister, and she's not ready to give that up. And so she leaves. She's going to go and she's going to try to find a different person. She's weighing some names in the back of her head. And as she leaves her sister's house, she kind of smells something in the air. There's a scent lingering, and it's another vampire, and she can tell this. And she is able to track this person down, and she just lays into him because this person has impeded on her territory. The prince, as a perk of Cicely's position, has made this a haven of sorts. It's a no vampire zone to protect her sister, because her sister, being a dementia patient, is kind of ripe for being preyed upon. But everybody in the city knows that this is a no-no. You don't come in Cicely's territory. But somebody has. They've broken the rule. And she lays into him. She finds him. She starts whipping that ass. And as she is holding this person down, and she's gone full feral at this point, she's raging out, really nasty face, fangs bared. She's like, "Who are you? Why are you here?" And what we find out, it's the young woman from the first of the book, from the train. And her name is Alejandra. And she doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know where she's at. She's just hungry. She doesn't know how she got to be here. She just needs blood. And as Cicely takes a step back and she's like, okay, who made you? Who's your sire? She doesn't know. And that's not common. That means somebody has done something wrong. They've created a vampire without permission. They've left this vampire without any direction, which could be bad for the entire game, for the Masquerade. And so she brings her back to her apartment. She's like, "Look, I'm probably going to kill you, but I need to know some more stuff from you first. So drink some blood, wake up in the morning, let's talk this out. I think you might be a caitiff." And what a caitiff is exactly what I just said. It's a vampire who doesn't know what clan they belong to. They don't know who their sire is. They have no idea what physical attributes are going to manifest. And they are kind of dangerous. They're clanless ones. They're outcasts. They don't have the benefit of having a backup squad, somebody they can call to help them through life or unlife. and really are, again, like I said, a threat to the entire hierarchy of everything. So they go to bed. She's like let's make it through the day. You've got some blood in your system. Chill out. Tomorrow we figure this out. Might kill you. Might run a stake through you. If I decide to do that, that's my prerogative. I don't really care what you think about it. But we'll deal with this tomorrow. So the sun rises, and they both sink into the slumber that comes with vampirism. Except Alejandra doesn't. Alejandra rises up, and her eyes are glowing, and she reaches into her hoodie, and she pulls out a stake and a hammer, and she looks. She looks over at this sleeping woman that's found her and threatened to kill her, and you can tell she's thinking about it. She's like, I could do this right now, and there's nothing you can do to stop me because I'm something else, and you don't know what I am. But she doesn't. She puts the stake and the hammer down, and she crawls in bed with her, and she goes to sleep. And that's where the main story ends. Tim is writing a story that is both fun for people who just like horror stories, for people who like vampire stories, who aren't familiar with the world of White Wolf. But if you can pick up on those Easter eggs, or if you don't, if you're familiar with the story, it's gonna energize you. You're gonna be enticed by the story. He's got a love and a respect for the White Wolf game. You can really tell. I don't know if he played it before, but you can tell he's done his research and his homework. And there's a lot of things in there that are going to really reach out to former players of the game or people who are still playing it. And it's going to be like, oh yeah, like this is like watching this game play out in real time. But you don't have to know those things. He makes it, he walks a fine line where he lets you know, hey, this is probably an Easter egg. What if I Googled this? What's a Bruja? Let me go find this out. Oh, it's one of these 12 clans. They were actually like, they're the bikers and the ruffians of the gang, but they've got a history. They used to be the warrior poets in Greece. Like there's a whole backstory to everybody. What's a Tremere? They're the blood magicians. Let me go research that real quick. And let me find the undercurrent of this story. You can do that if you want to. You by no means have to. He's going to lay out enough that it really lets you know that there's something happening here that you don't know the full scope of, and that's fine. It doesn't diminish your ability to read the story or your appreciation of it. It's fun stuff. I'm not going to get into the Anarch Tales, the second story that's written in by Teenie Howard, but it's fun stuff as well. It takes a look at the vampires that exist outside of the governmental vampire structure. Read it. It's a lot of fun. You actually get to see some more of the clans. And that'll encourage you more. But getting back to the main story, I want to talk about Dev Malya's art for a second because it's beautiful. It's fun. He's not taking a lot of chances here. He's not doing anything that we haven't seen comic artists do time and time again. He's got I don't know who you would attribute to. It's a comic style that you've seen before. It's very at home with Vault. It's actually a little bit more detailed than some of the stuff that you've probably seen from Vault before. It looks a little bit of what you could expect from a Tim Seeley artist too. It reminds me a little bit of like the Ex Sanguine work that Tim Seeley does. So it's something that I think Tim felt comfortable with, but it's fun. It looks like it fits into the Vampire the Masquerade world. It's very dark. One of my favorite panels on the page is when Cecily's boss, the blood wizard I was telling you guys about, the vampire, dips his finger into a goblet of blood and uses the blood magic to create this cloud of blood, but it all looks like these deranged and tortured and punished, like it looks like a scene from hell. That he's made in the air out of blood. Like the art is just it's very fun to look at. His storytelling is top notch. A lot of times when you get with stories from artists that you're not familiar with, or from Vault fledgling artists, and I don't know how long that Dev Malya has been working in the industry or not, but sometimes their storytelling isn't up to par, even though their individual panels might be great. This individual's sequentials are you couldn't ask for more. Like the story is so totally connected. There are no breaks. Nothing feels out of place. The fluidity of his storytelling, of their storytelling, again, I don't know if this is a man or a woman, is just, it's really, really good. I cannot wait to see what they do with the rest of this. I hope it's ongoing. I have a feeling it's probably going to be a 4-issue series, but even if that's all I get, it's going to be fun times.
Yeah, I actually meant to pick this one up off the shelf just because, I dig vampires, but I totally forgot to grab it. And I never played the game, but I did mean to get it. So I'm glad it was good. I'll probably pick it up if it's still on the shelf this week.
I hope so. I recommend it. Like I said, even if you don't have a history with the White Wolf games, you're there. Like if you've got a history with Nosferatu, then you've got a history with, like, you've got a base knowledge of vampires. If you've read the Anne Rice books, then you understand part of the vampires. And that's what's really cool about what the White Wolf world did, is they didn't just say, okay, all of our vampires are going to be Anne Rice type vampires, where they're these emotive, like, tortured souls and these artists, and those are there. They're called the Toreador. They're their own clan. The Nosferatu are actually a clan in this. Like when they are bitten by vampires, they are horribly disfigured. You've got blood mages. You've got mobsters. The Clan Giovanni, straight up old Italian mafia family of vampires. Ravnos are gypsies. Who go from place, like, there's everything you want from almost every corner of the vampire genre except for fucking Twilight is in this book. is in this world. And it's like, dude, if you like vampires, I've actually got some of the novels. If you feel like reading a prose book, I'll drop off to you.
Okay. I mean, not right at the moment, but yes, I will probably read it at some point.
For sure. Well, you just let me know when you're
awesome.
ready.
Will do.
Go check this out. What you been?
Why won't you read it right now, Craig? What's the problem?
Because I got other stuff I'm reading, man.
I mean, if you're really truly interested, why wouldn't you want to read it, say, right now?
I'll read the comic book right now because I have time to read that.
Okay. Well, okay. I feel better now.
I just said I would pick up the comic book if it's still on the shelf. He's talking about a prose novel. I just don't have time to read a prose right now.
Well, it seems like if you're really interested, you make time for it. Don't you think so, Caleb?
I'm not getting in this fight.
Oh, you're a mess, Matt.
No, I'm not doing it. What you been reading, Matt?
So I'm going to talk about an old book because if I talked about a book I actually read this week, it'd be one that I've spoken about before, just the latest issue. So I'm just going to mention from Marvel, Doctor Strange #1 from 2015 by Jason Aaron and Chris Bachalo. I feel like this should be mentioned. A little bit of making up for some damage we've been throwing Jason Aaron's way here lately, due to some creative choices. Some of us have not appreciated.
He deserves it.
I want to reiterate that when you say we, I'm not a part of that. I love what's happening. Moon rocks are awesome.
Yeah, moon rocks are awesome.
Yeah, there you go.
So I picked this up years ago because Jason Aaron was attached to it. I had absolutely no history with Doctor Strange whatsoever. I barely knew what he was and what he could do. And so I picked this up because I was like, well, as a character I'd always been curious about because he's always been around in the background, used, here and there throughout the Marvel, universe in the recent past. I loved this first arc, especially of Jason Aaron's run of Doctor Strange, is great. It is great. And thanks in no small part, definitely, to Chris Bachalo, because his art is outstanding in this run. And it fits this world like a glove. I don't remember ever reading a book with him attached to it in the past. If I'd read a book that he had done before this, I don't recall it. And it was a hell of an introduction because his art style being what it is, and he does the colors with this too. I mean, he does the entire page. Have either one of you guys read this?
I have not.
I'm assuming
again, it's one of those things. I don't read a whole lot of Doctor Strange books, but
see, I never had either, and that's part of the reason I made myself do so is because I hadn't,
right?
And I wanted to just give it a shot. And Jason Aaron being on it, I thought, well, this chances are, if I'm going to appreciate it, it's going to be when he writes it. And this is Jason Aaron at the top of his game, by the way. This is him doing what he does at his very best. But the first arc is all about, it's called The Last Days of Magic, and it's about this intergalactic team of assassins that have been hunting down those who practice the mystic arts and killing them. They're a society based on science and technology, and they see magic as an enemy of that. The more magic there is, the less energy and effort there is going to go to expanding science and technology. So that is the story of this overall arc. The dialogue in this story is outstanding. He introduces some things that were new to me. I'd never heard of the bar with no door, which is a bar in New York City that you can only gain access to if you practice magic, if you have access to the mystical arts of some way. Otherwise, there's no door, you can't get in. So he goes to this bar, and the Dr. Voodoo is there. Wanda is there as well. And as you get deeper into this series, there's also Jason Aaron. I'm going to give him credit for this because I'm pretty sure he created this. Doctor Strange has been exposed to all these strange ectoplasmic dimensions for so long. It has altered his body chemistry in minute ways. One being specifically, he can't eat normal food anymore. He's lost. Normal food is bland and boring, and he can't just stomach it. So he eats really weird, frankly gross things that he has brought with him from the ectoplasm universe, and he's got a fridge full of this stuff. So it's little touches like that were really, really good. He's walking through, as the story opens, he's battling some creatures that are being directed by a female form. The top half of her is a very sexy female. The bottom half of her is snake-like, and she's got like these spider legs coming off her back. And they're exchanging some dialogue, and he's like, "Yeah, I think she." I just want to
go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just going to clarify for Caleb that is not, in fact, how all females look below the waist.
That's correct.
Sorry.
I've seen video.
He casts a spell he's like, I think she's really into me. So he casts a spell to really uncover if he's right or not, as he's battling these creatures in this horror-scape. And he finally, he gets the best of them. Then, after his spell confirms that this female is actually into him, he brazenly approaches her and they begin to kiss. And about that time, he is interrupted by a disembodied voice saying, "Doctor," and he is snapped out of that, and we see him floating in the bedroom of a small child whose parents are standing nearby. And he's like, your son's affliction has been vanquished. Basically telling him he's all done here. And it's funny, the father goes, "Was he just making kissing sounds?" Which is a great touch, I thought. But he goes on, as he leaves the scene, there's little things. He's walking through New York City, and what we see is these ectoplasmic creatures floating through the air, many of which are attached to people that are walking around the city. And he calls these ectoplasmic parasites, most of which are harmless or beneficial to the people they're attached to. But occasionally he stumbles across one that's a harmful parasite, and he has to quickly vanquish it while he's out walking around. But the everything in this first arc, I just think is top notch. The dialogue, the story itself, and Chris Bachalo's art is just off the chain for this thing, man. So if you don't have any interest in Doctor Strange, like I was that person, I recommend reading this. And it really, like going in and watching the Doctor Strange movie, it definitely gave me more appreciation for the character going into that movie. Frankly, I don't know if I'd have went to the movie and watched if I hadn't read this. I probably would have waited for it to come out on video instead of going to the theater.
I'll co-sign on this because this is actually one of the few Doctor Strange stories I have read. I had to go look it up to double check, I'm pretty sure I read it just on the power of Jason Aaron's name alone. But it was really it's been a long time since I've read it, but it was really like I think you hit the nail on the head. It changed the way that we, or at least that I considered Doctor Strange, which is largely a character that I didn't necessarily care for. And I think it did that by changing some of the way I viewed Stephen Strange versus like the man versus the mantle. And those little tentacle things were insane.
Yeah. I stay away from magician stories in general. That's always been a meh type trope for me. I don't care for magician stories, but I made myself go pick it up just out of curiosity. And I listened to an interview with Jason Aaron, and he was like, I've always wanted to write a Doctor Strange story. And I remember thinking, well, why does he find Doctor Strange so compelling? What am I missing? So that's why I went and picked it up.
It's a good thing that you did, because it's some good stuff. I love.
Sounds like one I need to read.
Well, the fact that he put Wanda and Brother Voodoo as side characters in there makes me happy.
What's interesting is its characters referred to as Dr. Voodoo in this.
Yeah, he became Brother Voodoo. Hickman changed that.
Got it.
Unless maybe I have that backwards. Maybe he was always Brother Voodoo and now he's Dr. Voodoo. It's one or the other. I want to say Hickman's the one that changed that, though.
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with the background of that character, so I don't know.
Cool character if you ever get a chance. Essentially, Brother was an evil spirit asshole, and he had to become the paragon of the Hungan to overcome what his brother was doing. Lots of cool backstory with that. He dated Wanda for like 5 minutes, so that's why I cared. That's okay. She's my girl. I gotta
Jesus Christ, what a 5 minutes it'd have been, though.
We all want to take that ride. Some of us want to sit in different cars, but we all want to go on the ride.
Insufferable. Hey guys, remember that 5 minutes I was with Wanda? Yes, Caleb, we remember.
But no, dude, yeah. If you haven't checked it out, it's one of the better stories. So have you read any Doctor Strange since then, or keep up with the character at all? Or
I did pick up, after reading this and really digging it, I did pick up a little bit of the Mark Waid run. I didn't stay on it. Frankly, it felt just flat to me. And there was somebody else's, I picked up a couple of issues of somebody else's work on it, and I do not recall what writer that was.
I'm not sure. Our buddy David Price was saying great things about the recent run a few days ago, and like I said, I haven't read it, but it's focusing more on his identity as a surgeon.
Yeah, that's Mark Waid. Yeah.
Okay, that might have been what it was, but I haven't read that. But good stuff all around, and you can definitely find that in trade. There's a good chance your LCS has it. I know Discount Trades has it. Absolutely, you can get it on Comixology, however you want to read it. It's very much available. As I was looking up Chris Boccolo, I think is how you say his name, Bocello something. I was looking up his art, and I saw several links, so it's readily available. So put it in your life. Do it. We got anything else we want to chat about? We need to bring to the light, bring to the table, or are we ready to head this horse into the stable?
Let's head this horse into the stable. Analogies.
I mean, it works though, right? I don't know. We hope
it's
you
perfect,
all.
Perfect, Caleb. Don't let his laughter run your day.
I feel like I've been judged heavily this episode, and I don't appreciate it. I just want to file a complaint. I'll put it in the box. We hope you all at home listening have enjoyed us sitting around talking about comics. We love doing it. If nothing else, we're just a couple of buddies who we would be doing this anyway once a week, and it really gives us a chance to just sit down and be friends who like comics. And if nothing else, I think that's what comics are intended to do. It's meant to bring folks together. It's my favorite part is the community of comic book fans. Like I said, if you want to join us on our Facebook group or our Instagram page or our Twitter pages, all of those are available. Just seek us out, search us out. We're there. You can find us. And we'll be ready for you. We're sitting here waiting, wondering where you're at. Come on. But while we're waiting on you to come grace us with your digital presence, we're going to be getting ready for this next week's new comics as they pour out and hit the shelves. Lots of stuff is coming up, lots of good stuff. And I'm going to throw it over. Let's let Matt go first. Matt, tell us what you're going to grab on this next comic.
I'm going to pick up from Marvel Comics Maestro #1 by Peter David Germ. That's why. Yeah, that's right. That's why I go first. I don't know, the German or German Peralta and Dale Keown. So this is the origin story of Maestro done by Peter David. What, kids? Yep. What? Mine. It's mine.
Ours. You got to share that one with me.
Well, you look up a new book, Caleb. I'll throw mine out there.
Go ahead, do it, brother.
A Man Among Ye, #2 from Image Comics by Stephanie Phillips and Craig Cermak. The adventures of pirate queens Anne Bonny and Mary Read might be over before they begin. As a murderous mutiny sweeps Calico Jack, Jack's crew, forcing Anne and Mary to flee for their lives. Can they survive on the high seas long enough to plot their revenge? Who knows? Find out in issue #2.
Issue 1 was awesome. I really
enjoyed it. It was.
I like Stephanie's work. Her work, especially on historical fiction, is really strong. Really,
I agree. I cannot argue that at all.
So I didn't have to necessarily look up a second book because I already had one ready. Because really, what that was me being benevolent and gifting Matt a moment to talk about Maestro.
I stayed completely away from Maestro because I knew I had no chance with it.
I'm a good person. That's why. There is another #1 coming out this week that I'm kind of excited about, and it comes out from that same publisher that I was just talking about earlier, Vault Comics. It's called Shadow Service #1. It's being put out by Kevin Scott, Corin Howell, and a person I really, really like, Triona Farrell. The work that Triona does is top notch. Like I said, it's called Shadow Service #1. The pitch on this is, what would you do if your partner is cheating? What if you need a missing person to be found? You'd probably hire Gina Myers, and Gina Myers is a private investigator. She's the one you're looking for, but she also happens to be a witch, and she worries that her powers are going to make her more of a monster than the crooks that she's trying to hunt down and catch. But, it's not like London's criminal underworld is literally going to go to hell. Or is it? Dun, dun, dun. I like magic books. Like I said, I have my favorite character at Marvel that's not named the Hulk is Scarlet Witch. I also love detective stories. So there's a rich history with those. So I'm very interested to see what this book is.
Did you read Blood Magic?
I don't think I did, no.
Or Black Magic, I'm sorry.
Oh, Black Magic?
Greg Rucka.
No, I have not read that yet.
You need to if you like witchcraft and
also need to read Black
detectives. Yeah. Do what?
I said I also need to reread Black Monday Murders because I haven't read that again this year, and it's the hotness. But
that was kind of random, but okay.
Magic, Satanism and mundane life. So, but yeah, so go check out Shadow Service #1. And if nothing else, we got anything? You guys got any parting gifts? Any words of wisdom to the folks at home?
Do we have any regular wisdom to the folks at home? I don't know why we'd have any parting wisdom for them.
I don't know. Just I was opening you up to just drop a gem there, but you chose.
Okay. I did choose not to.
Well, the one thing that we will tell everybody at home is to have a great week, wear a mask, stay safe, keep your head up, and go forth and love some comics.
Woo!